Welcome to Study Loop.
Okay, for this problem, we're using external files to save data and then recover the data. And we also want to ask the user how many students there are and then enter some scores and then figure out which is the highest score. And so the first thing we're going to do, I'm going to use a variable called numStudents, get an input from the user and say how many students are there? Question mark. And then I want to deal with my file since we'll be saving this offline. Student, move my mouse so I can read. Student data file. And this isn't the file itself. This is just a variable that points to the file. I want to open the file. And then now we're going to name the actual file. Let's call it student scores.txt. And when I open a file, I have to tell it what I want to do with the file. And so I want to be able to write to that file, studentscores.txt. So now I'm just going to do a for loop for student in range. And if I just did range num students, it would work. But I actually want, instead of counting from like 0 to 4, if I have 5 students, I want to count from 1 to 5. I'll explain why in just a second. So I'm going to do 1 to num students plus 1. Okay, and so if I got 5 students, that's going to be the numbers 1 through 5. And then I'm going to say score equals, let's do another input to get the score from the user. Let's just say what is the score for student plus, we'll use a string, convert a number to a string, and this is where student is now the numbers 1 through 5 and not 0 through 4, if that's how many we have. And then I can just add a question mark. And I put a space there to make it a little bit more readable. And then I'm going to say student data file. And I'm going to write this information to the student data file. And it pretty much needs to be, at least my understanding, needs to be a string. So I'm going to convert the score to a string. And if I just left it right here, let's go ahead and run this, see if it works first of all. Let's say there's 3 students, 12, 34, and 56. Program ends. I'm not doing anything with the data. But if I open up that score or that file, I've got 12, 34, 56, and I don't have any way to separate, because I don't know if this is 12 or 123 or 1 and 23. And so to fix that, I'm going to go right here and I'm going to add a carriage return. You could do anything you want. You could add dots, but I like the thought of a carriage return. And so I'm going to put it in quotes, and it's going to be the reverse slash and an N. And so now when I run it, let's say there's 3 students. Let's go 56, 78, 8, or 90. And then when I open that file, I got 56, 78, 90. And so those still have those carriage returns there, those backslash n's that we'll have to get rid of when we take when we reclaim the data. But it certainly allows us to treat the data separately. All we have to do now for the first part is, again, go to student data file, and we should close it before we do anything else. And that ends the first half of the program. That's not a hashtag. And so I'm just going to put a line there to remind me when I look at the code that it's kind of 2 parts. So now what I want to do is I want to open the file and use it. So I'm going to use the same variable. That's not necessary, but already have it saved. I have to do the exact same file, student scores dot text, and this time when I want to open it, I want to open it to read, and so I'm going to put an R in those parentheses. And there's a couple of different ways to process this. I like doing the read lines because that will actually gather all of the data at once and put it into a list. So student data files, read lines, and then that's a function, so we need the parentheses. And then I'm going to do the main part of the program. I'm going to say max score is equal to 0 to keep track of the max score. And then I'm going to go through each of these students. So I'm going to say for student score in the data list. And so I'm going to take that first line, and again, if we look at the data I looked at earlier, it's not just a 56. Again, this is a string. It's not just a 56, it's a 56 with the /n. So I'm going to say score string equals the student score, because student score is a string with the /n dot, and there's a couple ways to do this as well, but I like using replace. So I'm going to replace the /n with an empty string. And so effectively that's how you can get rid of symbols that you don't want. And just, we're not there yet, but let me go ahead and print score string. And this is when you're programming, I like to do this just to make sure it's working up to a spot. How many students are there? Let's say there's 4 students now, 11, 22, 33, and 44. And then it prints off 11, 22, 33, and 44. And so it is in fact finding the extracting the data from the list, and we know that it's has eliminated this because the prints has 1 carriage return, and if we didn't get rid of this there would be 2 carriage returns. No idea if that makes sense, but it does to me, and I'm moving on. Okay, so then what we do is say score. Okay, that score string is a string, and so we need to convert it to a number, and I can do that with the command float, and then I can just process it now. F score is greater than max score. Then we say max score equals score. Okay, and then all we have to do is go outside of the for loop and say print the highest score is, and leave a space, and then plus, and then str score. No, max score. And then finally, what we always want to do whenever we open a file, we want to make sure that we come back and close the file. That should be a dot. And if we don't do that, then that eats up a lot of memory and makes our computer slower over time. So let's go ahead and run this. Let's say there are 5 students. Let's go 20. Okay, 2, 3, 33, 65, 34, and 47, and the high score is 65. If for some reason you wanted to have integers, you would use, you wouldn't use float. I think you'd use integer, but I don't know that off the top of my head. And That is the code for how you solve that problem, writing to external files and then reading back in.